대용 다저게 된 만년민 샤자도바 대니기 다 준세니 티바도 레오 소모 도지 티바 니수 송발레 준세니 티바데라 까동보 덴바ye 추정 콜로도 까바반 세니 메비 추정 콜로 까타마 레벌 넘버 10 추정 콜로데 고브렌자 바테다 준세니게 티바리데 노르 뒤베원게 가송 휴선바이.
Our teacher, the Buddha Shakyamuni, taught two vehicles or yanas, the causal yana, the Mahayana, and the resultant yana, the Vajrayana. The causal yana, the Mahayana, entailed the three turnings of the wheel as taught by Rinpoche over the last few days. The first turning of the wheel entailing the Four Noble Truths, the second turning of the wheel, the description of the characteristicless nature of phenomena, and the third turning of the wheel as was described yesterday. These were a brief description of the causal yana.
Pena Junsengi Tipi Chujan Kolo, Samdang, Drivosong Dorji Tipale, Saji, Jeji, Namjurji, Sam, Te, Tamji, Tene, Songji Chacha Toba Kore, Charter Turbako Yetsorji, Sumbanzabari.
Now the resultant yana, the Vajrayana, is classified into four divisions, known as the Kriya-Tantra, the Charya-Tantra, the Yoga-Tantra, and the Anatara-Yoga-Tantra. The three turnings of the wheel of the Dharma that constitute the causal yana, the Mahayana, plus the three lower classifications of Tantra, three lower classes of Tantra, the Kriya-Tantra, the Charya-Tantra, and the Yoga-Tantra, these six were all taught by the Buddha in the normal Nimanakaya form, the normal physical Nimanakaya form.
Saji, Mombo Sonare, Jeji, Mombo Sonare, Nanjurji, Mombo Sonare, Tela, Nenkashini, Tessera song, Nenkashini, Tessera song, Nenkashi Tessera song, Tela, Nela Nipamela, something. Nemimic Choto Sonare. Tenichatang, Saji, Jeji, Nanjurji, Nanjolami, Jidi, yes, on group of Junsin, Ta, Jangza, Jangzi, Jangri, Jang top de Pena, number ye goni, Gupa Cheparkin.
These tantras, classes of tantra, were taught by the Buddha in various different places, various different sites. Why, though, did he teach four different classes of tantra, the Kriya, Charya, Yoga, and Anutara Yoga Tantra classes? There are distinctions here between the things which are to be purified, the methods of purification, the results of purification, and the basis of purification for each of the different classes of Tantra. The differences between the Tantras exist within distinctions in these categories.
Then Jangza Konza go on the Zinana, J to rep me zongle, to rep me to song jaile, Jonze Jerry, Jarik, Tamari, Dorwan, Dordan, Jejon, number Yerzonte, Sache Nanjo, Lami to Tenison J to rep me to song J, she fatigue on at the ten. Penna, then Zangra la Gawa, Zanga Konza, Zangra dan, Dembala Gawa. Zangdradang Jipegoni Chunyanso Lamber Sepa Gawa, Tramzet Avoge, Gonzola Dine, Savage de Song. drumsy. Drumsy and a Zangdala Gavi Konzati. Tin Davik Konzati, Hunyanso Lamber Sepa, Gavala, Saji Somali. Savi Jate Nyanso on a Zangda Gugundu, Shadon Changlas of Pang Gugundu. Or Tin Davala, Tene, Drumsy Davik Konzala, Tene, Savi Jate Somali. Tayang, Tene Pena Jate, Chado Don, Dembe Konza. Chado Shok Chembo Don, Dembe Konza, Lembo Davik Konza, De Ndovar Sepeke, Tabla, Kepeki Jate Somali. Tene Yang Najar Don Dembe Konza, Jarbo Tava. De Ndovar Sepe, Tabla, Nanjurgi Jate Somali. Tene Dejadang, Shedang, Temu, Tene Nyamumba Shuk Chembo Don Dembe Konza, Mang Parpa Tava Tela, Tene Nanjur Lami Jate Somali. Then Ndovar Sepe, Tabla.
As far as what is to be purified, the humans who are to be purified by means of the practices entailed in these different classes of Tantra are concerned. First of all, for those people who for those people who like the practices concerned with purification, practices entailing giving up meat, giving up alcohol, and so on, this sort of thing, purification style practices, then the Buddha taught the practices of the Kriya-Tantra class. For those beings who have excessive amount of the emotional defilement of jealousy, those who are said to be like a minister in status, I think, whose status is like that of a minister, someone who is in a high position but not the highest, who has jealousy as his main emotional defilement. The Buddha taught the Charya-Tantra class. Then for someone whose main emotional defilement is pride, someone whose status is like that of a king, the Buddha taught the Yoga-Tantra class. Then for those people who have excessive emotional defilements, ordinary people who have the emotional defilements of anger, desire and delusion in great quantity, the Buddha taught the Maha-Anuttara Yoga Tantra class.
Pena Tata Naron Mega Nana, then Shadang Chang la Magankin, Zandra Konala Gankin Konza Yori, deep bit Tramzilla Yawa. Then drive Konza Yona, this Haji the Yamsalena Shara Yabo Yori, so on. Then Pena Jeji the Lembo Tabu could sort of thing, Jeji the Sonare, then Jarbuga Lembo Kona, Jeji the Yamsalena Guba, Marete Yenayon, Tata Naron Mega Nana. Nyamumba Deja Shadon Tumungaja Trado Naga Noni, Tini Pena Trado de Shuk Chimbo, don't Dambe Konza Yona, Ti Pena Lembo Tavula Pejawari. Lembo de Pena, Jarbola Lembo Chigmare, Lembo Mumbo Yori, Lombo Mombo Ganoni, Lembo Chigli Chig Narangte, Sinjik Gugundu, Cole Narangte, Sinjik Gugundu, Las of Patendawaka, Jarbu Lembo Tamjila, Trado Shuk Chimbo Yori. Tendrawala Pijan and Naronson Senking and on the Nyamomba Trado Shuk Chembo Yepe Konza Nyamomba Dejadon Shedon Najar, the Mulas of a Shuk Chun Chun Yobe Konza Yina, the Jeji Gejite, Nyamsolina, Tendrava Sotosung. Pete agent, then Najar Shuk Chembo Yepe Konza, the pen Jabundawala Pijava. Then Saji Nanjerji. Then Nyamumba Tomji. Chanyam get any shook chembo yobe conzo, and then Namjo Lamiki Jete, Tempan Zabari, Tendawala Pay Yavari.
We both unfortunately left out that the first category, people that like purification, the parallel here is with a Brahmin. Now, the point here of these parallels is examples. The first category, for example, is a Brahmin. the teachings are for, the Kriya-Tantra teachings are for someone who is like a Brahmin, someone who likes purification, and so on. It is not the case that these practices are only for exactly such a person, someone who actually is a Brahmin. The point is that these practices are intended for people who in general like that or are attracted to that style of practice, the style of practice where alcohol is given up, meat is given up, and so on, vows for abandoning these things are given up, a general purification style of practices. For such people, the Kriya-Tantras are taught. Then we have the second example, which was of the minister. It is not the case that the Charya-Tantras are only to be taught or practiced by someone who is actually a minister. The point is here, someone who has excessively the emotional defilement of jealousy. In other words, the other emotional defilements of delusion, anger, desire, and pride, where these are not so strong in an individual, and jealousy is the foremost emotional defilement, then such a person should, and it is very beneficial for such a person to practice the Charya-Tantra. Then again, with the Yoga-Tantra class, it is not only for someone who is a king or of such status, it is for someone whose main emotional defilement is that of pride. Moving on to the Anuttara Yoga Tantra class, this is for people in whom all the emotional defilements are equally strong, where all the emotions are strong, such as desire, anger, pride, jealousy, and delusion. Where all these are strong, then the Anuttara Yoga Tantra practices should be practiced.
Tene jangza nye momba ga ondo tene songa tene nye momba shuk chung chung yepe gongsa tamji ge nongo la tene sawe je songa tele nye momba te si shuk chenpo yepe gongsa tamji la tene je ji de songa tele jung shuk chenpo yepa tamji la nanjur je songa tene nye momba dok nga ka tamji chanyong ge shuk chenpo yepa tamji la nanjur lami ge je de songa le.
And then looking at the emotional defilements in general, if all the emotional defilements are not very strong at all in an individual, then for that individual there are the Kriya-Tantra class of practices. For someone in whom the emotional defilements are all somewhat strong, a little stronger, then there are the Charya-Tantra class of practices. Then for someone in whom the emotional defilements are relatively strong, we have the Yoga Tantra class of practices. And then finally, in someone in whom all the emotional defilements are equally strong and particularly strong, we have the teachings of the Anuttara Tantra class of practices. One might wonder why it is that this distinction is drawn between the different or the relative strengths of the emotional defilements. The point is here that there is the different emphasis placed within these different classes of tantras on the generation phase meditation and the perfection phase meditation. Within the perfection phase meditations, there are particular methods for suppressing the emotional defilements, transmuting them, transforming the emotional defilements into awareness, into pure awareness, and so on. And so it is the case then that in the higher tantras, there is more emphasis on the perfection phase process of meditation for dealing with the emotional defilements. And so we have in the Anuttara class of Tantras practices such as the 6 doctrines of Naropa and so on, which are perfection phase meditations and entail these techniques for dealing with strong emotional defilements.
Wangkorla matu pare, then someone the Yamsale Matapare. Then Wangkorla thing, Pena Wang Hisawa, then Abeshaka Daletana, Torwatan, Lupala, Jupayore, then Niore, Yan Torwatan, Lupala, Jup. Abeshaka Daleton, Torwa Lupani, the Kanyana, Pena Torhipa, then Naron Songa, Sengila, Kova Toma Mapane. Then Ling and Basapi, Digba don't drop a pacha, Tamji Pa, Tower Sepe, Tap Jake Tang. Then Yishi Laye, Wanga Sanaga, then Jane Tada, then Konza Tiki Jila, Lupar Sepate, Tang Niores, T Tang Nila, Jone, Teni Ramba Jando, then Nanjala and Jogo.
In practicing the practices associated with the resultant jhana of Vajrayana, in practicing these things, it is first necessary to obtain the empowerment, the initiation. The Sanskrit word for initiation is abhisheka, and this has two specific meanings. One meaning is to cast away or to throw away, to dispel might be a better word. And the other meaning is to pour, to pour or to, the word anoint keeps coming to mind, but that's not a good one. Let's just stick to pour. If you, let's take the first of these, the meaning of the first one, to cast away. One has in one's mind the emotional defilements and obscurations that have been developed from beginningless time. The empowerment and the practices associated with it are methods for casting these away, for dispelling or removing these emotional defilements. That's the force of the first meaning of the word abhisheka. The force of the second meaning, to pour, here is that within the empowerment, then the inspiration of the awareness deity itself is brought within the individual. This awareness is brought down into the individual, as if it is poured into the individual, brought into the person receiving the empowerment. So the point of the word abhisheka is that the initiation and the practices associated with it entail these two functions.
Then Saji Lan Juparsepe, one Yishi Tigli, Choya, Onkor Ujinta, Savage, Raptor, Draws on you. Then you do Yishi Tigli Sunji, Tiganon, Sajila, one number Niore, one number Ni de Pena, Choga one chick, the Jiso, Jepinga one chick, the one number Nima to Yomari. The one number Ni Korgupe, Jumsin de Cayena. Choyo wang tigi, mohon pala, chuku ke nupa, semji la yakbar sepe ke tap tang. Tene, jepin ke wang tene, mohon pala, longche zope koye sanlap de, ngaron chonga san la yakbar sepe ke, tene, tap namba ni tang yore.
Regarding the empowerment of the Kriya-Tantra class, in the, I believe the correct term is Jnana Bindu Tantra, it is described that there are two aspects to the Kriya-Tantra empowerment. There is a water empowerment and a crown empowerment. What are the reasons or the functions for these two empowerments? The function of the water empowerment is to infuse in the individual the ability to achieve the realization of Dharmakaya. And the function of the crown empowerment is to give the individual receiving the empowerment the ability to achieve the realization of Sambhogakaya.
Tadi Saji tela penna haya ondo sena Saji la Riksons sungjite Tejin shipe Rikchik, Pemmaga Rikchik, Dorji Rikchik Riksam. Penna de Yinshik Bere Yikyo de Candidaba Yana, Sonji Manlaga Chogataba. Sanji Manlaga Chogate, de Yinshik Rex Hajiri. De Naronso Nyamsolona, Nyamsolona, de Gala, the Nichepatella, Trudang, Sangago, Shadong Changlaso, Bango. Then Pemeke Regisum, then Tatang Aronso, then Sati Droma, Dedang. Then is a Sotong Janton, the Pemirek is Haji Choga. Then Rava Nyonso Lambert also Trudon Sangrat and Shachon Pangu. Then Dorji Gerek, the Sodu Konganches, Sona Doji, Ku Memboching, Jijol. Then Rava Sodu Jete, Nyamsolona, Teyakala, then Shachon Lasoba, Pang, Sangra Zigo Yore, then Saji Rexum, Sungi Tendava Yore.
The Kriya-Tantra class of practices are, the deities associated with them are subdivided into three classes or three types. There is the Tathagata class, the Lotus class, and the Vajra class. In the Tathagata class of practice, we have practices such as the Medicine Buddha practice. When one performs the Medicine Buddha meditation, it is, as it is a member of the Kriya-Tantra class, it is necessary that we give up drinking alcohol, eating meat, wash ourselves, generally apply pure practices. That is because it is a member of the Kriya-Tantra classification. Then in the Lotus type or Lotus category of practice, we have two that people are familiar with, the Zaptik Dolma. This is the normal 4-mandala puja to green Tara, that is known as the 4-mandala puja to green Tara, and also the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara meditation, the one that's done with the fasting practice. With both of these, again, because they belong to this class of practice, it is necessary, we have the vows associated with them of giving up alcohol, meat, and so on, and purification practices. And finally, in the Vajra class of practice, there is a practice called, I can't remember the correct Sanskrit name, Vajrapani wearing blue clothes is the literal translation, a form of Vajrapani practice. And again, with this, as it is a member of the Kriya-Tantra, then there is the necessity of not eating meat and drinking alcohol and so on.
Saji Tombo Patava Yena, Dachi de Lala Gom Jomari. Dinchi Kona Lala Gom, Dendo Latini Gom, Tela Chepambol, so on de. Then Tige Zuma da, Tige Tukane Vezetuna Dodon, Senjin Tangi Drabajunga La Sopa, Saji Tombo Pala Tendawachi Yore. Saji Cheparachina, Naron Dachi Jon Lala Gom, Dinji Lion La Gom, Tela Yang. Tenipen Tomin Davo good and Narang Yopo Tavo get Tese Mawa. Don Denki de Jarbo Tavo, Tese Yon, Tembo, Tendava goes on your then he visit or the Dajin Denji, Nikan Trocho, Tesaji Cheparchin. As in Denji Nigo Tro, Daji Nigo Tro. Saji Zombo Patava Yena, Denji Kona Netro, Dot and Naran Tamar Pare, Narang Dang, Senjin Tongi Yon to the Vajam.
The practices associated with the Kriya-Tantra involve this purification style of practice, including washing. Particularly, it is said that there is the washing of the 5 parts. This means one washes the 2 hands, the 2 feet, and the head. These are the 5 parts. Also, of course, there is not eating meat, not drinking alcohol, as was stated earlier. Now, within the actual meditation itself, there are two styles, the special style and the ordinary style. The ordinary style entails oneself, not imagining oneself as anything at all. One is just one's ordinary self, and in front of oneself one imagines the particular deity concerned, makes offerings to the deity, praises to the deity, and so forth, and on occasion the light radiates out from the deity in front of oneself, purifying the obscurations and defilements and evil dispositions within oneself and all beings. On the other hand, with the special style of practice, one does imagine oneself in the form of the deity or a deity, but one here conceives of oneself as being lower than the other deity, both physically lower than the one in front. The deity in front is seen as being higher, but one imagines oneself as being like a servant of that deity, being lower in class to that deity. And of course there are offerings again and radiation of light, although in this instance the light can come from both the self-generation as well as the front generation deities.
Pena sadhu gerektawa yana, tana sana doji njungbonderzi tawa, sana doji tumchin, sana doji tumchung la sopa, tanda mombo yore, te tamchi yon lami ke kongso tokwa yon mombo yore. Ngo che yena yang, te tamchi sadhu tamchi de saji ke kongso tokwa tanda mare, gashi lami ke kongso tokwa yore, gashi saji la tokwa yore, na tokwa yore.
It is not the case, however, that all forms of Avalokiteshvara are necessarily included within the Kriya-Tantra class. We've mentioned the 1,000-armed form of Avalokiteshvara. That is in the Kriya-Tantra classes. But there are others. For example, there is Jinasagara Avalokiteshvara, the red 4-armed form. This is included in the Anuttara Yoga Tantra classes. There is another Sanskrit, I can't remember, Korwa Dongtruk. It's a red standing form, and he is in the Anuttara Yoga Tantra classes. What was it? No. He is in the Anuttara Yoga Tantra class of deities. Then in the Vajrapani type as well, some Vajrapanis are included in the Kriya-Tantra classes. But there's Buddha Dhammara Vajrapani, Vajrachanda Vajrapani, and others which are included in the Anuttara Tantra Yoga classes. And so it is the case with other deities that some are in within one name of deity, some forms are in one class and other forms are in another class.
Tene kenzo songchu sangen senzi la dawe ke dengi chankor. Teye tangdo tene la kaan yinba teke tusu ke ningbo shrawam hong la sopa. Kaan yinba teke maga rangdra tong jipa kepa te draya la. Te yingdro tele weze chodochi. Weze chu somji tamji lan chepa pur sanlak chundu. Layon Sanjin Tamji Lapu, Sanjin Tamji Dikpa Droba Jang, Wezer Yatan. Then the Nimbo de Yongso Jorba Le, Ta Rixum Saji La Kang Yambatigo, Korun Jorbati, Zokja La.
The structure of the generation phase meditation for Kriya Yoga practices is subdivided into a six-fold structure. The first part is known as the deity of emptiness, or the empty deity. What this implies is a white moon disk, which is the seat for the deity upon which it will sit. This is first imagined, and this symbolizes conventional enlightened attitude. The second part of the structure is the seed syllable of the deity. Whatever that seed syllable might be, it is imagined as resounding with its own sound, and from this seed syllable light radiates, making offerings to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, dissolving back with the inspiration of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then radiating out to all beings and so forth, and purifying all beings of their obscurations and sufferings, and then the light dissolving back. This is known as the deity of sound, or the sound aspect of the deity. And the third part is that this light dissolves back in, and the we'll start again. First of all is dissolution into emptiness, contemplation of emptiness, and this is known as the empty deity, or the deity of emptiness. Then we have the moon disk, still symbolizing conventional enlightened attitude. This is known as the letter of the deity, or the deity's letter. And it is, yes, it is called the letter of the deity, or the deity of letter. This is the second. And the third is the seed syllable, resounding with its own sound. That is imagined on top of the moon disk. And this is known as the deity of sound, or the sound of the deity. Then, fourthly, light radiates, makes offerings to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, etc., dissolves back into the seed syllable, and the seed syllable then transforms into the form of the deity, the actual form of the deity. This is the fourth aspect, the form of the deity, and this is known as the form of the deity.
Saji la kangin ba tiga tansi pa gom ne te gom chan ne ti la teni tembar sanji la par se pe chi do la tiga teni omen sawa ta san ga te ba wa so wa ngombo manchu pa ta wa ya na pe me sa ja ke jo la ja ne ngarong tansi pa de teni tembar sanji la ba yo ti sa ja ti de la sa ja la teni ne ka tham chi do la yi ting ning de ma dra wa tu jendo ngarang la te dong te namba yin samba ta wa ting jeng do ma dra wa se ba te chema ka la yin sen ji da chema ma sa sen ji ka la yin ti la zhou go ne te ni sa ji ka la tham chi nyam sa len go go yo de song yo de.
Then the fifth stage entails what is known as the mudra deity, the mudra aspect of the deity. And here Rinpoche was demonstrating the lotus mudra, which is used with the 9-deity mandala of Akshobhya practice. Here what one does is, having imagined oneself as the commitment being of the deity, one stabilizes this contemplation by sealing the contemplation with the application of the mudras. And so this fifth stage is known as the mudra deity, or the mudra aspect of the deity. Then sixth and final part is the meditative absorption in the identification with the deity. This meditative absorption is the main contemplation of oneself as the form of the deity, where one develops the characteristics of the deity. So therefore this is known as the characteristic deity, or the deity with characteristics. And in general, Kriya-Tantra practices, the contemplation of the deities of Kriya-Tantra classes are structured in this way, with these six aspects of the deity being contemplated.
Tene dati ngarang tansi pa te la togo go ne gam ne tene dan de yi pa de ni jin chang dan de yi pa de jin chong ne pen jungji tembo do ngarang jungji ma be ku so do gam ne dan ngarang ge to ka ne we je tu chepel ha mo pa de me ba to ne den ji ge la de la chepa pa te pa yi ji so tene de pa lan ju go yo
Then this sixfold aspect of the meditation is all concerned with the commitment being, imagining oneself as the commitment being aspect of the deity. One then imagines in front of oneself the awareness being of the deity. And it is important that the awareness being is considered higher than oneself, the commitment being oneself is considered fairly low. Because then light radiates out from one's heart and offering goddesses radiate out from one's heart, and one imagines these offering goddesses presenting offerings to the awareness being in front, making praises to the awareness being in front of oneself, and so on. After the offering goddesses have made the offerings and praises, then there is also a part of the meditation where one performs the repetition of the mantra of the deity, and so on.
Rangdong Denji ge ne som do on wa hong de la thong ji la jin ro de ko song to ge san ji la par se pen chen ji la on wa ho hong ge tang do da we den je tang do we ze je phong bo da we den je tang do ho ge chen wa tu su la yin zhe da la gang yin ba de ge tu su ge de yin ta la ho ge chen wa ge de sa ta ne de ni so dang be jor we song du pe na then no do yin da mind ba sem tu su ga hong ting do yin zhe de ko na le ji ge do ne par si ne gam par se ba de ngo pe de ba wam then pe na na so dang be ge jor wa song ne den di song yo de la yang ren do gam na di gin de we de la xie wa je ba wang zha bo de le yin zhe par se be ta ne.
In this repetition of the mantra, or the repetition stage of the meditation, as with all, or with most deities, one first of all imagines in the three places of the deities concerned, both the front and the self-generations. In the three places, the letters Om, Ah, and Hum, as is normal. Then above the Hum letter that is in the heart, just above it, that is imagined as being in the lower part of the heart. Above it, in the upper part of the heart, one imagines a white moon disk, in the center of which, standing on top of the moon disk, is the seed syllable, whatever that might be, of the deity. And surrounding this is the mantra garland of the deity, in other words, the letters of the mantra standing up, surrounding the seed syllable, but standing on the edge of the moon disk. And one focuses one's attention, one-pointedly, on these letters, without any other thoughts arising, it is said, focusing one's attention solely on this. This type of repetition, continually applying one's mind to focusing the attention on these letters, is known as, this is a bad translation, but cessation repetition. All right, she agrees. Cessation repetition, or that which binds comes to bind the life of the deity, bind the life of the deity. These are particular methods, these meditations, for developing the realizations of the four activities of pacifying, controlling, increasing, and destroying.
Tiki drate la sen tse chek do ni par se ne gambar se ba tene hinen drope ten yi yin song yo. Tene di ji so tene drate yung ji jing jing na da ji jing na di drate yung da ji se na jing yung ma drop ba. Yi xi yin on do nyam bar jo ne tene gamba te la drate pa yal. Dra yal cha ne tene tong ni ge ngong la nyam bar ja ba de hong tong char ba se pe ge nye wa lan ba ju yin.
One then performs a meditation where one imagines the mantra resounding with its own sound. One imagines this as a beautiful, a very attractive sound, the sound of the mantra. And one contemplates this sound as an object within samatha meditation, focusing one's attention upon that sound. Then later, one by observing this sound, observes the empty essence of that sound, and thereby allows the sound to dissolve away into emptiness, and thereby contemplating emptiness, we rest in vipassana meditation.
Teyekana kosum yihi na ya dani topa yin se pena chukulungu chokusung ando jorba yin teni songyore. Teni songyore te pena driba mese dain sungyo te saji ke nangla tab chepar kin ten yo mare hi pe tsekre mato ke saji nyamso lo ne mese dain pado sang ji ke mare teni songwa mare. Te saji tab chepar kin tin yo mare ke tsekre.
If one practices the Kriya-Tantra classes, it is said that then after a period of 7 lifetimes one can achieve the realization of the 3 classes of deities within the Kriya-Tantra, meaning thereby the achievement of the realization of the 3 kayas, the 5 awarenesses and so forth. The point here is not to say that one is unable to achieve enlightenment within a period of 7 lifetimes by practicing these. That is not the point. It is not the point to say that it is impossible unless one does it for 7 lifetimes. The point of making a statement like this is to indicate that there is not a particular method within these practices. There is not a very special method within these practices, comparatively speaking. And that it is necessary to perform these practices a lot. Something's gone wrong with this.
Pena choya wang pombaga wang de, di pombaga wang de dang, jebinga wang de, then saja jangola yaja, pema saja jangola jabra seba, de jebinga wang kan sensi, di wang nige ji so, then jeji la dorji wang dang, terboga wang dang, menga wang som yore. Then jebinga sensi de saja, pema saja, jola jaba de jebinga sensi de. Mentupa la sopa la tendi yore. Tema to ringa to ujin la sopa yo mare saji kabla. Tela yina mengi jepinga wang. Te jepinga saja sunju te pema saja jeordo yapar sepa. Tela jepinga wang meng tagado. Ta te ni je tangdo ja choye wana chuko ke sana jela yapar sepa. Ton jepinga wana lungku ke sana jela yapar sepa. Ni te saji tong jikpari. Te ye je so doji ke on tene pena songji tangji ke tok je sanlan jupar sepa. Drba tena songji tangji je songga sanlan jupar sepa. Tene menga on tena kom songga senjin tangji la maung pa la chu tembar sepa ken senjin rabo. Tene yes. Di romantic. Romantic.
We move now to the Charya-Tantra class of practice. The empowerment in the Charya class has extra empowerments on top of the 2 that were mentioned for the Kriya-Tantra class. In the Kriya-Tantra we had the water empowerment, often known as the flask empowerment because of the flask that is used to carry the in which to carry the water, and also the crown empowerment. The crown empowerment is often not a real crown, as is the case in the higher tantras. The lotus mudra that Rinpoche demonstrated earlier on, which came particularly from the 9-deity Akshobhya practice, here symbolizes a crown, and this mudra is touched onto the student's head. Anyway, the point of these 2 empowerments is the same in the Charya-Tantra class as in the Kriya-Tantra class. The first providing the inspiration for the realization of Dharmakaya, and the second the same for the Sambhogakaya. The first for the Dharmakaya and the second for the Sambhogakaya, in case I said that wrongly. Then there are three further empowerments: Vajra, Bell, and Name empowerment. The Vajra empowerment grants the inspiration of the mind of all Buddhas. The Bell empowerment is the inspiration of the speech of all Buddhas. And the Name empowerment is an empowerment enabling the initiate, the one who receives the initiation, that he will later have the ability to teach Dharma to all beings. So in the Charya-Tantra class, then there are this five-fold structure to the empowerment: the water, crown, Vajra, Bell, and Name empowerment.
Jepeke Jishi Sawatige, Tenipena, Jepana, Saji don't Jipari, Trudang, Zangda Lasopa, Gogan. Then Nyonso Lambe, Sordon, Tawana, Nanjurke Jiton Jipari. They end to Jepana Naranga Saji Council Shi Savari. Tawa then Nanjurke Jila Sangi Shavari. They end to Teni Jeji Dojiti, Nika Jinda Wori. Jeba then Saji don't Jipari, Tawa then Yamsa Lambetson, Nanjurke Jiton Jipari. Telatin, Teni Nanjurke Jade Sangi Shagin. Teni Tata Kama Kashi Yore, Titsela, young Charons and Jacksina, Narang Travandandrawa Gurgun, Dandrawa Gurgun, son, Charons, two Jawa Jacksina, you know. They you are not that Travani.
The conduct, the style of practice in the Charya-Tantra is the same as that in the Kriya-Tantra. In other words, there are the purification practices of not eating meat, not drinking alcohol, and so on. These you already know as we've described them within the Kriya-Tantra classes. The view of the Charya-Tantra, in other words, the meditation itself, this is the same as in the Yoga-Tantra class of meditation, and these Rinpoche will be talking about tomorrow. This means then that there's not much left to say of the Charya-Tantra class other than that it entails half similarity with the Kriya-Tantra, that's the external or conduct side, and half the internal side, which is similar to the Yoga-Tantra classes. And these will be described tomorrow, the Yoga Tantras.